Welcome everyone to the Preschool Mindfulness Summit 2020. I'm really excited today to introduce you to Alex Koster. She's coming to us from Ireland, and she's the founder of rootsandwings.pub. She has written a book, which is a great book. I have a copy myself and highly recommend it, called Roots and Wings, Childhood Needs a Revolution. And she's also the author of Mindful Games. She has lots of resources on her website. So if you click the link below, there's lots of free, great downloadable tools on there that you can use with little short activities to bring mindfulness into your life. So welcome, Alex, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Helen. Lovely to see you again.
Yes.
Sorry, this was my husband's mobile. I put mine on silent, but of course, his
Oh, don't worry, no problem. So tell us a little bit about how this journey began for you into mindfulness that led to writing this book.
Yes, I think it probably started around 15 to 20 years ago at this stage. I have a condition called, it's a condition called sensory processing sensitivity, and it just means that kind of all sensory input and an emotional input affects me a lot more deeply, it seems, as I have found out through the years. And it was kind of a combination with probably quite a dysfunctional family situation that it came to a head probably 15, 20 years ago, when I started to really struggle with anxiety, with panic attacks, all sorts of things like that. And I didn't really have a great understanding, about what was happening. So I did some CBT therapy at the time, but I was always a researcher, so I started to read loads of anything I could get my hands on. I've always kind of had an interest in anything, any alternative kind of methods. I grew up, my mom would have been a Reiki master and shiatsu and meditation as well. So I had done a couple of meditation retreats at that stage as well. But again, it only was kind of scratching the surface. So when it came kind of to a head, I came across a book. It was actually by a German author at the time, and it was about mindfulness meditation. And I was reading it, and my problem, I think, at the time was that I was trying to fix myself the whole time. I had whatever was going on in my head. I thought it was something wrong with me. I wanted to get rid of what was going on. And I remember the real aha moment really was when I was reading a passage on, accepting things as they are at this moment, and it was literally like somebody had given me permission to just leave things as it was fine, it was okay. Of course, it wasn't very pleasant, and it was quite difficult, but there was an aha moment in that moment, and I was like, I need to know more about this, so and that's what really when it started. I started to read loads and anything I could get my hands on. At the time, I probably did my first 8-week mindfulness course as well, and it really was from there then that I really could see firsthand how it had such a positive effect. And even just by the simple things of things are as they are at the moment. And that was literally my aha moment. So from there then, because I am a teacher, I wasn't a mom at that time, I just thought these are they're just life skills that anybody should know about, and that children should be taught from an early age. So it just kind of developed from there, really.
Yeah, I have a similar aha with the acceptance, because I, at some point realized I'm just fighting myself all the time, and that takes a lot of energy. So so thank you for sharing your journey. So Alex, tell us why you believe it's so important. I know you just touched a little bit on this, but why do you think that we should bring this into schools and to families? And encourage society in general to be more mindful?
Yeah, I think, especially in the last 2 decades, life experiences, society, family structures have changed so much. that life is very different. Raising children is very different nowadays, but life for children is very different nowadays as well. Life seems to have become a lot more fast-paced. It doesn't necessarily have to be all about trauma or traumatic experiences, but it's literally just the pace of life. Most parents are working, like family structures have changed. There isn't kind of a multi-generational living like it used to be in houses anymore, which means that, a lot of children spend a lot of time probably outside of their families in childcare facilities, obviously then in school and, preschool as well. But I mean, that's always been the way. But I think that, there seems to be a lot of distraction nowadays as well, and very little connection. It's kind of a trend. There's things like, obviously, the rise of technology. There's a lot of, due to all of these life circumstances, there seems to be a very high rise in mental health problems. Even they don't necessarily all have to do with trauma, but children just don't have the time for real connection anymore. There seems to be, they're either in school or they're in childcare facilities. Then there seems to be, sometimes I think parents, not everybody, it's very, obviously I should never generalize, but there seems to be this fear that children have to be entertained all the time, they have to be babysat all the time, they have to be, they have to be busy, they have to kind of, see what their talents are. So it's not only school, it's even after school activities. And what I find is that a lot of the time it seems to be competitive activities. There doesn't seem to be a lot of activities that are just for the sake of it, just connecting to nature, just, being creative, just having some time for boredom. I think boredom is one of the main driver for any innovation there ever was, or for any creativity. So, children are literally presented with things all the time. It doesn't even just have to be technology, but they're kind of nearly spoon-fed anything, information, entertainment, on a constant basis. And there seems to be very little time for them to become quiet, to become bored. So I think it's really time to get back to basics in a lot of things. And I think people feel under pressure. Parents feel under pressure. They only want the best for their child. Everybody wants the best for their children. But I think parents need to take the pressure off themselves as well, and just try and slow down, take things out of schedules rather than adding more, and not to be so hard on themselves as well. I think parents are, including myself, are very hard on themselves, trying to, push themselves and their children to their limits. And I think we really need to kind of take a lot of steps back and go back to basics in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I love that term that you use, back to basics. I think it's so true. And as you said, people have good intentions, but we see it everywhere. This adding more instead of maybe looking at taking away, and yeah, the whole concept of being bored and just developing your imagination and curiosity, and having that space and that stillness to explore, I think is so important as well. So Alex, share with us a few practical activities that you find really helpful for children.
I think, a lot of the changes can be, real simple changes, even just to the environment. I studied to be a teacher specifically for children with autism, and I remember, one of the main approaches we had at the time was it's called the teach approach. And I remember even at the time I was thinking, this sounds like complete common sense for any young child. Things are supposed to get much more simplified. There should be as little as possible distractions on the walls. There shouldn't be, a lot of classrooms nowadays that I go into or that I see, even as an adult, I'm completely overwhelmed. Of course, the artwork should be displayed. Of course, you need, some scales or visuals on the walls, but it seems to be that there is no structure to it, and that it's, everything, has to kind of
Finding everywhere.
So it's basically kind of simplifying things and structuring them a little bit more. It doesn't have to be completely, unflexible, but I think things need to be more simplified, less distractions, less visual distractions. And like for at home, for example, what we try and do, and it's always just about trying. Nobody's perfect, no child, no parent, no family, is try to kind of even reduce the amount of stuff that's around. Children have so many toys, so many, I remember even at Christmas, we have made a point at this stage to reduce the amount of toys that they're getting. And then even at that, we rotate them. So we take maybe, 1/3 or half of them away, put them up in the attic, leave everything else down there. And then after 6 months or 3 months, whatever, yourself, you just rotate them. It's like another mini Christmas, So it's just, and even the type of toys, the type of materials that you're using. A lot of the toys nowadays are press a button and the toy does, all sorts of noises. But the children themselves, don't really have to do a lot of thinking or use their imagination a lot. So I think going back to basics, even in their toys, like my girls, I see them, they love playing with their kitchen, with their dolls, with a train set, or even with, junk art. Just use simple things that aren't pre-prescribed. There's so many things now that literally have to plan. This is what you do. These are the pieces that you put together. These are the buttons that you press. So I think, going back to basics in a lot of things like that, in the materials that you use, in the amount of stuff that's there. And I think one of the main things as well is educating parents, because parents want the best. They definitely always want the best, but they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves. Like I said, I know the feeling very well myself. Yeah. So even to give parents the permission of some self-compassion, of some self-care, for them to realize that it's as important that they look after themselves as it is that they look after their children, but even to give kind of some real vital information. There's a lot of stuff that I obviously didn't know before, and I did a lot of research when I was writing my book. For example, you see a lot of young parents at the moment that are either giving their young children, screens to entertain them with, but I think a problem is that they themselves are using technology so much that the children are missing out on a lot of real life connections. And parents don't want to harm their child. So I think it's important that they get information, for example, that children in the critical period, as an under the age of 3, they need that interaction with their parents, that real interaction, because of brain development. They're very simple things to explain. And if people realize these things, they know why they shouldn't use as much technology or why they should interact for their children. So I think it's very important that there is education of parents as well, because they do always want the best for their children.
Yeah, really good point. I think a lot of times, as you said, it's maybe people just don't know or don't realize just what an effect it has. And there's so much research in early years development. So the more that we can bring that awareness out, I think, and as you say, kind of reducing all this distraction. I know I've seen that as well, like the classrooms that are just everywhere you look, there's things hanging and posted and toys everywhere. And I love that idea of kind of rotating the materials that you have and letting it be something fresh every 4 or 5 months. That's a really great tip. So Alex, tell us a little bit more about your mindful games and maybe some examples of games or activities that young children might like to do.
I think young children need, even as a grown-up, mindfulness can sometimes be very abstract, and the concepts can a lot of the time be very abstract. So, things like become aware of your emotions, or, become aware of your body. Young children don't have that body awareness yet, or the ability to kind of, focus on abstract concepts. So I think it's always very important for young children to use, to use play, to use visuals, to use storytelling. There's obviously a lot of resources out there. Our own, you were just saying about mindful games. Why I developed them was exactly for that reason, to have some visuals for children that are both visual and simple, and give very simple instructions. So we have a kindness challenge, even just introducing, one of my main things is kind of introducing mindfulness into everyday life that can be integrated into your everyday life. So, for example, we have a kindness challenge. We at home have it literally on the fridge, and you can just literally choose, today I will, and you can choose from 20, 30 small, simple things. Say hello to my teacher with a smile, open the door for somebody, let somebody go first. They're all kind of both very manageable, and also you can, you can just literally choose them in an age appropriate way, whatever way you want to do it. So, sometimes it just takes simple, small visuals and ideas that then enable you to integrate them into your daily routine. And that's the same for a classroom. You can just have a board, and like what we did before was a gratitude tree, for example. So you just have the skeleton of a tree, and children then take turns every day. Maybe, there's so many ways of doing it, either taking turns, or every child writes down what they're grateful for. So anything that gives an interactive experience to children, and again, you can do it. All children and all age groups are the same. So it's quite easy just to, for some children, just use photographs or pictures that they paint or draw to, I'm grateful for, my family, and then that can, the older the children get, they can use gratitude journals, they can use a gratitude jar. There's so many kind of different ideas. But as long as it's age appropriate, as it's visual, and as interactive and fun as possible.
Yeah, great. And what advice would you have for the preschool teachers watching, or parents of young children, if they want to develop their own mindfulness? What kind of would be the first step for somebody that's new to the field, or that wants to bring this into their home or their classroom?
I think a lot of, there seems to be sometimes, I only wrote a post about that yesterday, sometimes there's a misconception about mindfulness being being a completely separate practice. Like, I always think really everybody already is practicing mindfulness.
Yeah.
It might be 5 seconds, it might be a minute, anything that you pay attention to, that you put your awareness to, is mindfulness. And I think sometimes people have this thing, it's only, for hippies, or it's only for Buddhist monks, but it's so easily integrated into your everyday life, and you can just make such simple changes. Go out. Like, one of the big things for me is connecting yourself and children back to nature. I was just telling you before, I only recently did a course with Dr. Nicole Albrecht, which was brilliant, on nature-based mindfulness. And there was research out which I found really interesting, and it's only if children get directly connected, or anybody gets directly connected to nature and sees themselves as part of it, will they actually care and protect the planet in a later life. Because we can see that at the moment, even though people know what's happening, people read it in the newspaper every day, they see it on telly every day, there still seems to be a real kind of I don't know even how to call it, like there is a reluctance to take action. Yeah. So it's small things like that. Go out to nature, bring children out to nature, do small acts of kindness. All the mindful attitudes like gratitude, kindness, self-compassion, non-judgment. These are all so easily integrated. Do an act of kindness just purposefully. Set out the day to say, okay, today I'm going to be kind. I'm going to try to be helpful. Even in your other everyday habits, be mindful of how you nourish your body. Be mindful of what you eat, how you eat, where you get your food from. There's so many small things. I mean, obviously, formal mindfulness is very beneficial, but I know myself that it can be, especially when you have very young children and you don't have maybe your parents around that can take the kids for an hour or two.
Yeah.
It's very hard to establish a formal mindfulness practice. But of course, if you can, I definitely recommend, doing maybe an 8-week course to establish a practice. But even if you can't, there are so many ways to kind of step by step, integrate mindfulness in your everyday life and into education as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think just taking those steps that fit into your life is so important than making it into a huge thing that you feel you can't begin, right? So, so really good points, Alex. So just before we finish today, is there any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think we kind of touched on that. I know kind of my major thing is really trying to connect children back to nature. And I think we do need a big change in our education system, because there seems to be still much too much emphasis on a kind of a competitive academic approach, which is obviously necessary, but I really believe that nature can be, outdoor and nature activities can be integrated. Every subject can be integrated into that. So, and not only that, even other mindfulness, it's just very easily integrated without making a big deal or saying, oh, we are now doing mindfulness. There are so many things that any teacher and any parent can integrate for themselves and also for the children that they're raising or educating. So that's really
I love the point about how important it is to teach children to love nature and the world and have that connection, because as you mentioned, we need to all kind of do our part at the moment. So well, thank you so much, Alex, for joining us and sharing all your thoughts and ideas. And I just want to remind everyone, we'll have the link to Alex's books and materials and website, so you can go and download those free resources, and encourage you to read her book. It's really useful. So thanks once again for coming on and for sharing with us.
Thank you, Helen. It's lovely to talk to you again.
Thanks.